Hi guys, it's Sasha and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Sasha Gibbs She's Type Wonderful, a channel aimed at increasing awareness about type 1 diabetes. To do this, I tell you what type 1 diabetes is, what it isn't. I show you some of the things I do on a day-to-day basis to manage life with this disease. I also do a little bit of vlogging just to show you that even though type 1 diabetes is challenging, you're still able to live a full life. So as you can see from the title, I'm going to be sharing my experience with you about being pregnant while having this disease. I have been blessed with not one, not two, but 3 children. And I am going to, this is not a tip video per se, I'm just going to share my experiences with you about being pregnant. So if you are new here, welcome to my channel. Thank you for choosing this channel, and even more so if you are returning. Thank you so much for coming back. Now without further ado, let's get into the video.
This time, this is my fight song. Take back my life song.
So I'm thinking about pregnancies because today is my daughter's birthday, and I'm in somewhat of a reflective space because I'm thinking about the fact that if insulin had not been discovered by Banting and Best when it was, I would not have been able to bring any of my children to term. And I have not one, not two, but 3 children. And without insulin, it would have been impossible for me to do this. So I'm in somewhat of a reflective space, and I said, why not do a video about this? And so it's not really a tip video, as I said. I'm just sharing my experience with you, and hopefully this video can help someone, either if you're thinking about getting pregnant, if you are already pregnant, if you have been pregnant and you're thinking of doing it all over again, or if it's just the education aspect and I can add something to what you already know. I'm hoping this video can be beneficial. So let me just say that it's always good to plan before things happen to you, but with this thing called life, it throws you so many curveballs. So in my case, none of my 3 children were planned, none of them. So I learned and went along with the process, and it's always good to start off with a good A1C. But let me just tell you that if you are in this position where you're pregnant and your A1C is not where it should be, mine never was. I did not start off being pregnant with an A1C below 6. My A1Cs were always above 6, and I just had to do the best I could, and I worked really hard at maintaining blood sugar levels, healthy, good glucose levels, and I was able to deliver healthy children. So so I don't ramble, because as I said, I was just in a reflective space and I decided to do this. So I don't ramble. I'll start off with pregnancy 1, pregnancy 2, pregnancy 3. So let me just say in general, I think that because God knew I had enough issues to deal with, I never had the typical pregnancy. I didn't have the weight gain, the change in facial features, and so on. I look exactly the same as I do now throughout my pregnancies. I must say, all I had was a tummy. I didn't have the swollen ankles, the swollen nose, the change in skin pigmentation, the hair loss, or anything like that. The only thing I really had to focus on was maintaining blood sugar levels, and it was stressful enough. Thank heavens I didn't have to worry about all the other things. Morning sickness I did not have. I threw up in all of my pregnancies, and I tell you, I have had 3. In all of my pregnancies, I threw up only 1 time, and that one vomit episode, I almost died, and I'll tell you about it. So stick out the video. and it was in my third pregnancy. But I'm going to start off with pregnancy number 1. When I discovered I was pregnant, it was close to finding out that I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So I didn't really know a lot of things. So in trying to find a OBGYN, it was a difficult experience, because every doctor that I called, they told me, I'm sorry, but we are not taking on any high-risk pregnancies at this time. So it was difficult for me actually to find the OBGYN who was willing to take on my care, being a type 1 diabetic. So when I finally found a OBGYN who was willing to take on my case, I was beyond happy. So I can tell you how stressful it was. I cried a couple times. I cried because every time I found someone and I made the call and I said, oh, I am diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I was met with, oh, I'm so sorry, but we are not taking on any high-risk pregnancies at this time. So when I did find the OBGYN, I was very thankful, and I stayed there. All my 3 pregnancies were with the same OBGYN. So because I'm high risk, because of my type 1 diabetes, I also had to have a specialist, perinatologist. I had to have that. So, and I also stayed with the same perinatologist for all my 3 pregnancies. So that is a must do. And it is recommended, if you have type 1 diabetes, to start off with A1Cs, hemoglobin A1C 6 and below. But for me, I did not. I don't remember what it was. I can say with absolute confidence that my A1C was not below 6. It was not at 6 or below 6. I knew I was above that, and I worked really hard, because when you are a type 1 diabetic and pregnant, you're thinking about your unborn child. It's not only about you. It's thinking that whatever you put in your mouth can impact the health of your child. So it's very important that you have a lot of support during your pregnancy. And let me tell you, being newly diagnosed and so on, when I was pregnant the first time, it was the hungriest time of my life. Listen, for some reason, I could not get this is all off memory. I could not get my breakfast in check, because I typically ate the same thing just to make sure that I could get a greater control of my blood sugar. I ate the same thing for lunch, I ate the same thing for breakfast, and for some reason I could not get it right. Like anything I put in my mouth, my sugars were just off the chain. So I ended up having for breakfast during pregnancy number 1 a slice of bread and a hard-boiled egg. And let me tell you, that is what I ate during my pregnancy. I ate a slice of whole wheat bread with a hard-boiled egg. Can I tell you, hungry? But I did it because after I had it, my blood sugar levels were normalized and it was fine. I don't know why. I don't even remember if I discussed this with my doctor or not, but for some reason I just couldn't get it right. And when I did have that, my blood sugars were fine. I don't think I struggled so much with lunch and dinner, but I couldn't get breakfast right. It was difficult for me in the sense that I had just started a job. I hadn't been there for enough time for my insurance to kick in, and they had a system that you couldn't be absent too many times or something like that. I don't really remember, but it was a weird system where if you were late a certain amount of time, if you were absent a certain amount of time, they called it occurrences, and if you accrued a certain amount, you had to be let go. Well, I had to, because listen, I had to see my OBGYN every month. I had to see my perinatologist also every month. And then as my pregnancy progressed, I had to see my perinatologist every week. So can you imagine having a job that would tell you, oh, you can't be So I remember I would butt heads a lot of time when I went to work, and I would say, okay, I have to leave for my appointment. And basically when they would tell me no, I basically said, well, if I have to choose this job between going to my doctor to make sure that my unborn child is okay, of course I choose my unborn child over this job. So, you know, I'm going to go. So I was a little bit insubordinate, but I had to. My child versus any job, I'll choose that any day. And I did that. And eventually I think I was let go. I don't remember. I think I was let go. But I did what I had to do for my unborn child at the time. 1 and 2, before I go to pregnancy number 2, I was also induced. They still induced type 1 diabetic pregnant women. And I think I was induced at 36 or 38 weeks, I think. Induced meaning my contractions were not allowed to happen naturally. I was admitted, I was given drugs so that my contractions would start and I would end up having the child. So I was actually scheduled to have my firstborn child. And I remember, so it was a schedule. It's not like when you lay around and contractions happen. It wasn't like that for me at all. I had my date when I was supposed to go into the hospital. I went to the hospital. I think I was given Pitocin to induce my contractions, and I had my baby according to a schedule. I also had to do what they call amniocentesis. This was where they removed fluid from the amniotic fluid. They removed that, and that was tested for genetic diseases or something like that. But luckily I went through all of that. They were all normal and so on. So it was pretty stressful. But as I said, I only had that to focus on. I didn't have the morning sickness, thank God. I didn't have any of that. I gained 20 pounds to be exact. I remember that. I gained 20 pounds. At that time, I think I was about 128, 135 or something like that. So I gained about 20 pounds. Looking at me from behind, you couldn't tell I was pregnant. If you saw my face, you couldn't tell I was pregnant. It was only if I got up, you saw stomach, that you would know I was pregnant. So I didn't have the discomfort that most women experience while being pregnant. I didn't have that. Pregnancy number 2, I don't remember too much, but it was pretty much the same. I had the same OBGYN, I had the same perinatologist, I had the same frequency of appointments. So it's a lot of appointments. You have to see your OBGYN. You also have to see a specialist who monitors the growth of the baby. One thing with type 1 diabetes that I didn't mention, why induction happens, is that it is there is a fear that the child will grow too big. And even at 38 weeks, I think my child was 7 pounds or 8 pounds, I think, even with the induction. Even though I didn't go to 40 weeks, I was induced. My child was, I think, 7 or 8 pounds at birth. My second pregnancy was the same. I still had a lot of support, that emotional, that mental support. I had that. I had the frequency of appointments. This time I gained a little bit more weight. I gained, I think, 50 pounds I gained. And I will try to find pictures as I go, and maybe put up a couple pictures so you can see what I'm talking about. I still didn't have the change in physical features, the swollen ankles. I still didn't know what it was to throw up. I still didn't know morning sickness. I had to do my same routine. I had to submit my blood sugar levels to my perinatologist, because at this time, your regular endocrinologist, when you become pregnant, stops seeing you. So your diabetic care falls to your perinatologist. And she did a great job. She was Jamaican like myself. And she would adjust my insulin dose, and as your pregnancy progresses, your insulin dose also increases. You require more insulin. And this was, I also switched my insulin too when I became pregnant, because before then I wasn't really, because of cost and so on. At that time I was watching my cost, so I was not on, I was on the regular 70/30, Humulin 70/30, and I spoke about this before on a couple of my videos. I talked about the insulin pump. I still wasn't on an insulin pump, so it was so much harder. Carb counting, that's where carb counting came in, and so on. So I would, every week I would send my glucose levels to my endocrinologist, and my insulin dosage would be adjusted accordingly. So if I needed to go up and so on. And I also worked with a nutritionist as well. And as I said, my pregnancy number 2, I was also induced at 38 weeks, I think 38 weeks. And I think my second child, he was about 8 pounds as well, 8 pounds something. So again, I was induced. And so my third child, and it's her birthday that I said led to this whole video, this whole reflection. Her birthday, and I've had two pregnancies already. I don't know what it is to have morning sickness. I don't really know what cravings are. I still didn't experience it with her. I had only one episode where I threw up, and I almost died. And what happened is, I was at work for some reason, whatever, because I've always worked straight, because remember I told you I was induced. So I always knew the day I would stop working, and I would work right up. Another thing I would do, and I did this through all my pregnancies, I would do moderate exercise. And I remember all my co-workers, my little group, they would all be roped in whether they wanted to or not, because I can be just a little bit bossy. I can see some of you watching this now and saying a little bit, but yeah, I can be just a little bit bossy. So I remember, like, on all my lunch breaks, I would go on maybe 30-minute walks or so on, and I did that throughout all my pregnancies. I would walk during my lunchtime. So pregnancy number 3, it was just the same, minimal weight gain, working as hard as I can to maintain my blood sugar levels, no episodes of morning sickness. But I had this time, I went to work, I wasn't feeling well, I remember it vividly, and I threw up that morning. I threw up after eating, it was a sandwich that I ate, and I threw up. I remember throwing up, and I was appalled, because I'm thinking, oh my God, I threw up at work. I was so grossed out about someone having to clean my vomit that I started cleaning it myself. I remember running to the bathroom, and my co-worker Sharon, she was like, really, Sasha? Really? Go outside, get some fresh air. I'll do it for you. I was more grossed out about someone having to clean it up than me doing it. And she convinced me. I left it alone and I went outside. But my vomiting, it actually caused my blood sugar to start dropping. And I sat in my car. I don't remember this really, but apparently this I know now. I hadn't locked my front door, and 2 of my co-workers were passing, and I think they said hi, and then they told me afterwards. They were saying, how come Sasha didn't answer us? That's so unlike her. Let's see, why didn't she answer? So they came back to the car, and there I was actually passed out. I was passed out in my car. Apparently, having thrown up, it caused my blood sugar levels to drop, because of course I didn't get glucose or the energy that I needed from the food that I had just ate, because I had just thrown up. I had already taken the insulin for that food, so I threw up, and the insulin is still going to work on whatever is in my body, and it did drop my blood sugar, passed out. I was there, passed out in the car. I think angels sent them, I do, and also I think maybe my personality saved me, because if I was not the sort of person who said hello to people or even greeted people, my not having answered them would not have been unusual, because they tell me it was because I didn't respond to them, and they were thinking, oh, that's so unlike her, let's see if she's okay. And one thing I will say too is, any place that you work, never keep your type 1 diagnosis secret. That is something that I've always practiced. Any place that I work, I always ensure that a handful of people know that I have type 1 diabetes. And when they tell me, when they found me, they called 911 immediately. And I was working at a hospital at the time, a psychiatric facility, of course. And because they already knew what was going on with me, they were able to, the nurses, and I remember the nurse manager was there, everyone was in that parking lot. My coworker, who had told me to go and get some fresh air, she said when she heard the code, she was like, oh no, Sasha went out there and passed out. She said the whole hospital and everything, people came out, and the nurse manager, she was able to tell them she's diabetic, we think her sugar might be low, and they were able to give me a glucagon shot right there, and I started coming around. So that's why I say, if you are diabetic, if you're pregnant, anything like that, make sure that a few of your peers know exactly your situation. Don't keep it a secret, because you never know. You might have that low episode. I went to the hospital. I didn't stay overnight, and they checked me out. The baby was fine. It didn't impact the baby at all. Thank heavens for that. And I was discharged. Given a clean bill of health, and so on. So this little girl, another thing that she did, remember I told you, by my third pregnancy, they had stopped inductions. And I asked my doctor, how come you're not doing induction? She said, no, we're not doing inductions anymore. You're allowed to go full term and so on. We'll just continue to monitor the baby as we always would do. So I'm home. I remember I was on the phone with my mom, and I started feeling a little bit funny. Remember, I have 2 kids, but I don't know what it is like to feel contractions. I don't know, because I've always been induced. So I was telling her, oh, I'm feeling contractions, but I think it's Braxton Hicks, because it's not time, I'm not due yet, so I know I'm okay. Listen. These things got worse. Listen, my husband, we had to go to the hospital. Listen, I behaved so badly. Listen, this was the worst pain I have ever felt in my life. I was not able to get any kind of painkillers or anything. It was too far gone by the time I went to the hospital. So let me tell you, I had her without anything. Listen, I behaved so badly that by the time I made it to the hospital, I was not checked in until I had that child. Listen, the pain was excruciating. Let me tell you something. I behaved so badly that they just had to get me out of their waiting area. They had to send me up even though I wasn't registered or anything. It wasn't after I had that baby until I was put in the system. Nothing was checked. That the people just had to get me out of their waiting room and into a room. I remember when I felt that pain, it was out of this world. I remember the doctor saying to me, listen, remember you are diabetic. Remember, we do not want you to pass out. So I think it's when she said that to me that it kind of registered, and I said, huh, I think I can do this. And I forgot everything else. I just bared down and I started pushing. I forgot about everything else that I was going through, and I was able to push, and my baby was delivered. And let me tell you, all 3 of my children were healthy. None of them are diabetic. Thank heavens for that. My daughter, though, was a little bit different. I was discharged home without her because, and this happens sometimes with children of diabetics, they're not able to regulate their blood sugars on their own when she was just born. So she was kept overnight for, I think she stayed there 2 days or so, and then she was able to discharge home. So that was my experience. It was very difficult, but doable. And you'll make mistakes along the way, but just remember, as long as you're doing your best, it doesn't have to start off from the ideal situation. If you are able to plan for your pregnancy, sure, go ahead and do that. But oftentimes life just comes at us. Like for me, as I said, none of my 3 children were planned. My A1Cs, none of it was ever where it was supposed to be when I became pregnant. But I worked hard. I controlled my intake, what I ate. I worked hard at it, and with the help of my perinatologist, and I was able to do it. So you can too. So that was my pregnancy experience. It was challenging, but I did it. I still had less to deal with than everything else because, as I said, I only had my my blood sugars to focus on, which I say only, but that alone was huge. I didn't have the added issue of morning sickness and so on, except for the one time that I threw up. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something from the video. Leave me a comment below. Are you a type 1 diabetic? Have you ever been pregnant? What was your experience being pregnant while living with this disease? I would love to hear from you. Are you not yet pregnant? Thinking about getting pregnant? What are some of the precautions, or what are some of the things that you are trying to do to prepare yourself for pregnancy? I would love to hear from you. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, if you found the content of my channel beneficial, I ask that you not leave before hitting that subscribe button. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, so that as soon as I upload a video, you will be the first to know. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you for the next one. Bye!
Doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. Stand